Today I'm going to be comparing my two bikes to see which is superior. Representing the trail bike is my Trek Fuel EX7, and representing the enduro is my new Norco Range Carbon. I've done some pretty crazy stuff on both of these, so it'll be interesting to see what's better at what categories. I'm going to try to make this as fair as possible for the Trek because I know a lot of you might think that the Norco's way better. I'll be rating these bikes in 10 categories from 0 to 10, so the best score a bike could ever get is a 100. So let's get to it. The first category is going to be tech. For this, I'm looking at which bike handles rocks and roots better. So this one is going to go to the Range by far. I think they both do a pretty good job handling this, but without a doubt the Range is going to take this one. I'm still giving the Fuel EX7 a decent score because for a trail bike it handles it really well. The reason that the Norco does have an advantage though is because that's what the bike is made for. It's an enduro bike, and enduro is made for tech. I took my Trek up to Whistler and it handled it pretty well. That's why it is getting a decent score. So now we'll move on to the next category, which is cornering. I'm going to be looking at big berms and small berms just because I have an idea for both on both bikes. This one's very close, however I do feel that the Trek handles big berms a little bit better, especially from Family Cross at Whistler Bike Park. Since the Trek can move around a little bit more, it's much easier to shred the berms, and you can also go faster while feeling more confident. For an example of the small berms, I timed a run down Boot Camp's downhill section on both bikes, and the Trek beat it out by 6 seconds. Therefore, it's a little faster. Don't get me wrong, both of these bikes are great at cornering, except I feel like the Trek has a slight edge. So this next category is my favorite one, and it's jumping ability. This one's very straightforward, and it's pretty much all just how the bike handles in the air. This is where the Norco is going to get some points for its travel, and I'm going to give it the higher score here. Although the Trek is better at cornering and it can go into jumps better, the Norco is way better in the air. It's easier to manage, and it also feels a lot smoother when you're landing. The Norco's rear shock really does help with this because it has a special dampener that does help make it smoother. The Trek doesn't have this, but it still does have a nice Fox shock in the back. I do have separate reviews on each of these bikes, so I'll link them into the description. In the meantime though, the Norco's definitely going to win this category. If you try out an enduro bike and a trail bike, you'll know that the main reason why it's better at jumping is just because of that travel. So now we'll move on to a category that's related to jumping, and it's whips. I recently learned a whip a few weeks ago, and I've been obsessed with that lately. So when I took my Trek out to Duthie, I tried whips on Flying Squirrel. I attempted these on both bikes on the same jumps, and I have to say, I was not that impressed by the Trek. Right here is me doing the same jump, and if you compare them, you can see that on the Norco, I swing my back out a lot further. You can barely notice anything when I'm on the Trek. I think the Trek isn't as good as whips as the Norco because it has knock block. Knock block prevents your handlebars from turning too far, and that's one of the main things you need to do in a whip, and it doesn't let you turn it past a certain point. So right now the Trek is falling behind a little bit, but it won't because in the next category I'll be giving it some more points than a Norco. This category is climbing, and let me explain for a minute. So for this, I'm using my overall experience with both bikes, and I think the Trek definitely beats out the Norco. The Fuel has way less travel, which means that it can get up hills easier. With the Norco, I find myself having to walk up some trails a lot, and it's less efficient for climbing. Some other people that have tried my Norco don't agree with me and they think it's good, but based off my experience, I can say that the Trek feels better. The Range does climb really well for an enduro bike, and I'm actually surprised at its ability. That's why they're both getting good scores. So now we'll move on to the next category. This category is how active the suspension feels when you're riding, and also the overall smoothness when you're riding. Since these are two different type of bikes, this is kind of an interesting category. I wouldn't say it's unfair, but I would say that the Norco wins just because it has a little bit more travel. The travel helps make it more cushy as well as more smooth, and that's why it's going to win the point here. The Range has 170 millimeters in the front and 160 in the rear, and the Trek only has 140 and 130. The 1.5 extra points gained by the Norco is going to be because of its gain in travel, but the Trek for a trail bike is very smooth. So from here on, all of the groups are going to be on the actual bike and not how it handles. The next category is maintenance, and for this I'm looking at the reliability of each bike. This includes how many times I've taken it to the shop and how many problems I've had. I'm going to give this to the Trek because I've had it way longer and I've had to take it to the shop 2 times. And with the Norco, I've already had to take it to the shop 2 times and it's been half the time that I've had it. I've had to take the Trek to the shop for 2 minor problems. These were shifting issues and a kink in the dropper post cable. The Norco, I also had shifting issues, which is pretty minor, but then I had one major issue. The back wheel and cassette were a little bent, so that's why my bike's in the shop right now. So overall, the Trek is definitely a lot more reliable than the Range. So now we have 3 more categories left, and this one is going to be value for your money. This includes everything surrounding the bike, like maintenance the bike shop will give you included, and some other things such as warranty. For this one, I'm going to give no advantage to each certain bike. It's a tie. On both of these, you have really good shifting, and you also have really good suspension for the price. The Norco is obviously going to have better components because it is generally more expensive, like the carbon frame upgrade, the rear shock, and the front shock, but overall, they're pretty similar. You might think that if they have so many similarities, then why is the Norco so much more expensive? But it's definitely because it's a carbon frame. If you didn't know, carbon frames cost a lot more than aluminum frames, but they're also way lighter, smoother, and quieter. These both definitely do a really good job at this, so they're going to both receive an 8 out of 10. So now we're going to move on to the next 2 categories, which are about the whole entire bike. The first of these ones are overall handling. This is completely general, and it doesn't specify where. So this includes jumps, tech, and climbing. I'm going to give this to the Norco just because it's better at jumps and tech, and the Trek is only better than the Norco at climbing. It's not a huge difference, but I still think it's noticeable. The Trek is definitely way better at climbing than the Norco, but the Norco also has way better downhill abilities. The reason I'm giving the Norco a higher score is because I'm more of a downhill rider. If I was a cross-country racer, like a professional cross-country racer, then I would definitely give the Trek more points here. So we're at the last category now, and this is probably what's most obvious to people when they're looking to buy a bike. It's the overall capabilities. How much will you be able to do on this bike? I'm going to give it to the Norco, mainly because its travel really helps your ability to do tricks and learn new skills. The Norco is also just generally easier to manage, so you have an easier time learning on the bike. So that's it for this video, and now I'll tell you the total scores of each bike. The Norco won this battle as it got a score of 83 out of 100, while the Trek got 73 out of 100. These are both great scores considering that a 5 out of 10 is average for every category. That's pretty much all I have to say for this video, and thank you guys for watching. Please comment down below seeing if you like this, because I could do this with other bikes and other different types of bikes.